What's up guys, Matt Monas here. And just recently Sony released 3 amazing smartphones, a 4.7-inch Xperia Z5 compact aimed at those who want something smaller and easy to hold with one hand. And on the high end, they released a Sony Xperia Z5 Premium with a 5.5-inch screen and a 4K display, a first for a smartphone. But somewhere in the middle came along the Sony Xperia Z5. It looks a lot similar to the Sony Xperia Z3 Plus and the Z3. But a lot has changed. It's more refined, feels better in the hand, and we're going to find out whether or not it's worth the purchase. If you've seen the Z2 and the Z3, then you've pretty much seen the Z5. Well, at least in terms of design. The size, shape, and 5.2-inch screen share similarities to the Z3. But once you actually pick up the phone, you start to notice the subtle differences. It still retains the same glass back panel, but instead of being clear like the one on the Z3, it's now frosted, which does wonders for making fingerprints non-existent. The sides of the Z5 are still curved like its predecessor, but no longer make the phone feel slippery in the hand. The back of the phone where the glass meets the metal now has an edge to it. On the top left, you have your micro SD card port and SIM slot, and on the right side, you have a dedicated camera button, volume controls, and a power button fingerprint scanner combo. I found the volume controls to be in an awkward position. When I try to move my thumb down, it hovers just over the volume controls, making it impossible to get to unless I slide the phone up or use my opposite hand. The Z5 is also waterproof just like its past siblings, but the biggest difference this time is that there are no more rubber caps. The micro USB port is exposed and can be submerged in water, and the only cap on the phone is metal and happens to cover the micro SD card and SIM slot. Just make sure to let the micro USB port dry before plugging in your charger. Overall, I still think the Sony Xperia Z5 is a very attractive phone, even though it shares some of the same design philosophies as its past predecessors. Sony's refined it in a way that it's a lot easier to hold in the hand and it's not nearly as slippery. Now the button placement could be better, but the one thing that I dislike about the design is the actual fingerprint scanner itself. Now, on paper it makes sense. Your thumb rests nicely on the side, so you automatically activate it and go into your phone. But the problem is the fingerprint scanner itself is a little small, so I found it to be a little bit inaccurate. On top of that, if you hold your phone with your left hand, you have to either point your finger inwards in order to activate it or program it for the side of your finger. And that's a very frustrating experience for left-handed people. So good design, poor button placement, fingerprint scanner could be better. Next up is the display, and I think most people either love or hate the Truluminous IPS LCD display on the Z5. It's still 5.2 inches and 1080p, but has a very blue, cool color tone to it. Blacks look good, color reproduction is faithful, but my biggest gripe was the viewing angles. When you're looking straight at the phone, everything looks fine. But when you start to tilt it to the side, the colors start to dull or out or even distort. It's still pleasant enough for viewing images and media, but it's not my first choice for a display compared to the competition. But the good news is below and above that display are 2 forward-facing stereo speakers. At full volume, audio is crisp and clear, getting loud enough to make it stand out over its mono speaker competition. Inside rests a high-res audio converter that does an impressive job when you put on a pair of headphones. The average video or YouTube clip sounds even better. Inside packs an octa-core Snapdragon 810 chip paired with an Adreno 430 GPU and 3GB of RAM, putting the specs on the same level as other high-end phones such as the Nexus 6P and HTC One M9. Overall, the device runs pretty smooth, but it's not perfect. I found the odd stutter or lag when transitioning between apps, and I found it took a second more than usual to load them. I also noticed the phone gets quite warm just above the Sony sign. And this usually happens when you're performing more moderate to intensive tasks. Sony is always behind the game when it comes to releasing the latest version of Android. Most phones are planning an upgrade to Android 6.0, and the Z5 is hitting the market with Android 5.1.1 Lollipop. Of course, Sony promises to update it at some point. Overall, Sony has done a pretty decent job at not modifying Android too much, but there's still overlays and apps that remind you to buy something from the Sony store. It also has its own battery saver, which is similar to Doze and Android 6.0. It's called Stamina Mode, and it puts certain apps on standby when the screen is off. And just like the One M9 and S6 line, it also has themes to choose from. In terms of gestures, you can double tap the screen to wake up, but not to turn it off. Inside is a 2900 mAh battery, and Sony mentions that the Z5 will last up to 2 days on a charge. Well, that's probably true with stamina mode on and very light use. but my experience was more of a full day, going from 6:45 a.m. and ending the day with about 25% battery life left at around 10 p.m. Screen on time averaged around 3 hours, and I'm a moderate to sometimes heavy user, so the battery meets my expectations on making it through the entire day, but definitely not 2. Unfortunately, there's no wireless charging, but it has quick charging in case you need to top up quickly throughout the day. In terms of storage, it comes with 32 gigabytes of internal storage space and a micro SD card slot capable of holding up to 200 gigabytes. Okay, so if you're gonna buy this phone, this is the main reason why you should buy it, and that's the camera. Sony makes the majority of the best camera sensors that are in smartphones today, which is no surprise that the Z5 has such an amazing one. It's equipped with a 23 megapixel Exmor RS CMOS unit with 1.1 micron pixels, paired with a 24mm f2.0G lens, but no optical image stabilization. Sony claims that the Z5 has ultra-fast focusing in just 30 milliseconds. However, in practice, I felt it wasn't any faster than the LG G4 or Galaxy S6. The only delay that I noticed was the time between taking a picture and being able to take a new one. And this is probably due to the size of the picture taken and having to process it in between shots. As for the quality of photos, I was really impressed. The 23 megapixel sensor is able to capture sharp images with a high level of detail that most smartphones just can't produce. Post-processing is pretty well balanced with no over-sharpening or excessive noise reduction. In bright light, photos look vibrant, clear, and dynamic range is good, and I find I was able to take pretty balanced photos whether you're indoors or out. At night or low light, the Z5 holds up pretty well even with the exclusion of OIS. Sony leaves the Z5 on 8 megapixels by default, and you're able to get some brighter photos at night if you choose to switch from 23. The Galaxy S6 and LG G4 still do a better job at night, but the Z5 still performs admirably. On the front is a 5 megapixel sensor with a 25mm f2.4 lens and does a good job at taking selfies. And finally, video performance is pretty solid as well. The video looks great and surprisingly doesn't have too much focus hunting considering the lack of OIS. Overall, I am really impressed with the camera on the Z5. DxOMark ranks it as the best camera on a smartphone, but based on real-life usage, I feel the Note 5, Edge Plus, Nexus 6P, and even the iPhone 6s Plus have better real-life results. Alright, so here's my closing thoughts. The Sony Xperia Z5 is still a very attractive smartphone, even though it shares a lot of the same design philosophies as its past predecessors. Sony made a lot of small iterations to the device to make it feel better in the hand, to make it less slippery, and they frosted the back glass so it doesn't attract or doesn't look like it attracts a lot of fingerprints. It has a great screen when you're looking directly at it. It has awesome dual front-facing stereo speakers, and if you love to take photos, it's going to have one of the best cameras on a smartphone to date. But there are a few things that I didn't like about it. I don't like the button placement. It could have been a little bit more well planned, perhaps putting the volume controls above the power button. And I also don't like the fingerprint scanner. It should have been placed on the right side of the phone, because a lot of left-handed people are going to be very unhappy. And on top of that, the phone still gets a little bit hot, so it could be a major issue down the road. At the end of the day, I feel this is a very, very decent phone, but it's just missing that wow factor compared to some of the other phones that came on the market. I want you guys think of the Sony Xperia Z5 in the comments below. If you have one, let me know what you like and dislike about it. And I want to thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, smash that like button. If you're new to the channel, feel free to subscribe, and I'll see everybody in the next video.